electrical safety bag, plastic bag, and let's get that out. And we'll see what all kinds of goodies we have in here. Wow, it's just like Christmas. Okay. Got some bottom tabs we're going to put on. And we've got some supplemental information we're going to put into our book as well. Okay. I'll give you a close-up view of the table as we work. Everybody ready? Let's get going. Okay, so the National Electric Code, also known as NFPA 70, National Fire Protection Association 70, referred to as the National Electric Code. Now, I mentioned in another video that you could be working out of the 2011 or the 2008. Comes out every 3 years, new edition. And basically, the 2008 is okay because they haven't, as far as I know, updated any of the questions, and there's not much that has been changed between the two editions. But if you have a choice, I would definitely work out of the current edition that they're currently reviewing, which is the 2011 edition. Okay, so let's start this off with the little plastic bag. Let's get all our little goodies out of there. Now, if you remember earlier, I was saying to you that the NEC is the most important book. At least 50%, if not more, of your questions are going to be coming out of the National Electric Code. So we got to pay particular attention to this particular book. And if you're going to do anything in regards to the question, I mean not do anything in regards to questions, make sure that you do those NEC questions, the National Electric Code questions, because those are definitely more important because there's more questions coming out of the exam from the National Electric Code. Okay, so let's start taking a look at this and see what we're going to do. Now, this is a fresh copy. You probably have a fresh copy as well. You may have added the side tabs to it. Okay, these are some side tabs we sell, and I don't know why that came up like that, but if that ever happens to you where a tab pops open, now it won't come open, but anyway, if it pops open, you just take a piece of tape, plastic tape, and put it down here to hold it down. Okay, so yeah, here's one that's popped open. Maybe it got really hot or something in my car, and it just pops open sometimes. So just squeeze it down and put a piece of tape across here, a little piece of tape, clear tape, and you'll be good to go. Okay, I've seen that happen on some of the older books. All right, so this one's been set up already for the side tabs, all right, which are the chapter heading tabs. Okay, and then we're going to set up now the lower section tabs. And I'm going to go ahead and use that book there as a reference. And I've actually got this for you. I've already printed up. So let's get this out. 2011 NEC bottom book tabs. Now, if I have a 2008 of this, if you are working out of the 2008 and you want, before you even start this video, I would drop me an email and ask me for the sheet that tells you where all the 2008 tabs go. Okay, I think there was one or two people that had told me that they had the 2008 edition of the NEC, and I believe in your packet I gave you the 2008 bottom tab sheet. Okay, where they go. If not, no problem. I got it. I can send it to you. Just stop the video right now. This video will be done within the hour, and just drop me an email. I'll be taking lunch after this video, and I will send you out that sheet if you're watching this live. If you're watching it not live at another time, no problem. Just send me an email and then start the video when you've got that, because it's going to be a lot easier for you. Okay, you can follow along with what I'm saying as well. I may give you some pointers as we go through this, in addition to what you would learn just by yourself sticking on the actual tab. So, all right, the first thing we want to do is you've got a little sticker that says wiring here. Now, this book, National Electric Code, is all about electrical safety, specifically about electrical safety when it comes to wiring, cabling, conductors, raceways, tubing, conduit fill, things of that nature. That's what this talks about. It's electrical safety. It's basically telling you what to do and what not to do, what you shall and shall not do. Okay, So the reason I stick this on here, I take this wiring tab, or sticker, excuse me, and I stick this on the book down here, just to remind you and everybody that this is about wiring, okay? And the reason for that is you can be, let's say you had a fire alarm question, and the fire alarm books, the NFPA 72 and NFPA 101, they're about equipment. They talk about components. They don't talk about wiring. Everything that has to do with fire alarms, telecommunication systems, about putting in conduit and putting in cabling, it all comes out of this book. This is all about electrical safety out of this book. All right, so that's why I put wiring. You know, remember I said earlier, these books are going to sit next to the CRT, the monitor, on the right and left. So you'll be looking at right in your face there, wiring, and that's going to hopefully help you remember that this is about wiring. Now, I also put the electrical safety sticker up here. That's the one that was on your sticker list, and you want to go ahead and do that as well since we're here. Because tomorrow we won't be doing this stuff. We'll be going through the actual books themselves. So take the electrical safety sticker and go ahead and put that on the top of the book here. All right. Trying to find you one to show you one, but I think I would have them everywhere, but I don't apparently. So, all right. So go ahead and stick ES on those reference designators that are in your yellow package. Stick that up there. ES represents electrical safety. Now, I'm going to run, let me go get real quick my other, while you're doing that, I'm going to get my other NEC book. Okay. I went to the shelf to get it, and I had it right next to me here. I had already put the bottom tabs on, so that's why I wanted to see that one. All right, let's get through this as quick as we can. We're going to start with cable and raceways. And that's going to be on page 2. And actually, I do have a 2008 edition here, and I can kind of call out those numbers as well if you happen to have the 2008. I'm not quite sure you can see this one's in much worse condition than the newer one, but so they're both on page 2. 2008 and 2011 is on page 2. How are we going to lay this out here? It's a little bit easier. Okay. 2008, 2011. Cable and raceways. Let's stick that on 70-2, lower left-hand corner there, cable and raceways, 70-2. Okay. The next one is going to be on page 22, and that's code tree. Code tree, page 22. Again, I mentioned earlier, if you push this down like this, makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to stick the tab on there. And how I do these tabs, again, peel them, close them together like that. Now I've got it in my finger where it's not sticky, it's like this, and the sticky part's right here. And then I take the page, and I actually, when I go to do it, I actually angle it a little bit so that it goes on with a little slight angle. And then you can kind of feel it there where it's supposed to stop, because it's got, this side is larger, thicker than this side over here. So it kind of makes it easier to get on if you want to, if you're being a perfectionist like I am. So I'm going to, see, you can't, it's hard to take these off this page because they've been on there for a while. I'm ripping it, but yeah. just stick a new one on there. Just go like this, push this down, and then just stick this new one right in there like that. There you go. Okay. Got that? Pretty simple stuff. All right, the next one is working spaces. 2011 working spaces is on page 36. And again, this is on your list here, 36. So you can just reference this list as you go down. Working spaces. You can see what I've done here on page working spaces is also, well, let's see, code tree is on page 22 of the 2008. Working spaces is on page 36. So that corresponds to the 2011 as well, so we don't have any differences at this point. But you can see what I did here. I drew a line highlighter from the working space tabs over to page 37 and then down to here. See that? Because working spaces starts here. Notice it says Roman numeral 2, 600 volts nominal or less. Okay, that's what we are. We're under 600 volts. Low voltage is under 600 volts. Okay, so the stuff before that was above 600 volts. So you want to stay out of those sections. But it's easy if you draw the line over there. You can see where it's at. So if you had to look without drawing a highlighted line over there, it would take you a while to figure out where this working space is started. Working spaces, what they are is those are things around about just different areas that you're going to be putting panels in and stuff like that. That's your working space. You put a panel on the wall. You've got to dedicate some working space around that panel, okay? Again, we're going to talk more about this all stuff tomorrow. We're just getting these books set up for today. All right, so the working space is there. And the same with the code tree. You know, notice I drew a line from the code tree. Pretty sloppy line, but in any case, it goes from here up to the top, and then it goes over. The code tree, I call it a code tree. It's this section in here. All right, so that's your code tree. And the up, over. And there's a reason for that and why I call it a code tree, and we'll get into that tomorrow. Cables and raceways, we're going to be highlighting this later on today in this session. We'll come back to that, so you're going to need to have that drawn as well. Service entrance is the next one. Or is that right? No, bonding. Oh, okay, no. I've added service entrance. Yeah, I've added a sticker. Actually, it was a while ago. Page 78, service entrance. Page 78. So you want to stick that right next to working spaces like that. And services are right here, Article 230. You don't have to look too far for that one. But still, I'd highlight that and draw a markup to it as well. Now, on 2008 edition, it's page 72. So it's page 72. And then it goes over to this section here on the next page. So, okay. Bonding is next. 2011 bonding tab goes on page 116. Okay, there it is right there. And then for 2008 edition, it's on page 108. All right. And that's bonding. And now, you definitely want to draw a line on this one because there's two sections to this article or chapter. It's an article. We call it a chapter 250. Grounding and bonding. First part is grounding, all of this over here. And then you got bonding. So we'll explain the difference between them tomorrow. But the thing is, you want to know the separation here. And, it's Roman numeral 5. If you look at that closely, it says in Roman numeral 5 bonding. But it's small. So, draw your line over there to bonding. Okay? You're with your highlighter. The next one is going to be burial depths. Burial depths. And in 2008, burial depths are page 138. And this is a chart, minimum cover requirements. It's a chart, table 300.5. It talks about different barrel depths of cabling and location of the wiring, method or circuit. And you can see on the left, if you're putting it under, say, for example, a highway or street or two-family dwelling, you have different columns based on if it's direct buried, meaning it doesn't have any kind of covering, like a piece of pipe or conduit or anything, or if it's rigid metal conduit or intermediate metal conduit, then you've got some different depths you bury it at, so forth. Okay, you want to definitely check that out. You'll definitely have a couple questions out of this section right here. The next one is view all tabs. Let's pass that one by and let's go to page 152, ampacity. Page 152, ampacity. And by the way, barrel depths for the 2008 is page 128. Okay, 128 for barrel depths on 2008. Ampacity, of course, is on page 152. You start over again on the very left-hand side here. Okay. And then ampacity allowance is on page 154. Ampacity allowance, and then there's tables that relate to that right above it. Okay, and ampacity and ampacity allowance, derating, and so forth. There hasn't been any questions that I can remember that relate to this, but in Florida there is, not that it relates to you, but there may be something relating to this if it starts talking about temperature of conductors and so forth. So that's why I put them in here, because I was always concerned that this would be a topic that they would hit. But I haven't heard anybody say anything to me about it, but that doesn't mean that they haven't been tested on it. Okay, so the next one is outlet boxes. And what outlet boxes are is any kind of receptacle, handholds, things like that, enclosures and so forth. So basically, that's on page 176. For 2011, and for the 2008, it's on page 168. And backing up, ampacity for 2008 is on page 146, and ampacity allowance for 2008 is on page 148. Okay. So again, this, you might want to consider drawing a line, highlighted line all the way across to page 177, up the page, and go over here to enclosures. Okay, so I put the tab in outlet boxes because the question will probably be related to an outlet box, but it could be an enclosure, it could be a handhold box, it could be a condo body, it could be anything. So not just, but I just called it, I think I used to name it enclosures, but I think outlet box is a better synonym for that. Okay, next is going to be pool clearances. Now we're moving quite a bit back to the back section of the book. On page 578, 2011 edition in the NEC, you've got your pool clearances here. And you notice for the 2008 edition, it's on page 558. 578 for 2011, 558 for 2008. Okay. This talks about, oh, sorry, it's not that. It's 2008. It is 560. Excuse me, 560 2008. Okay, and you can see here, it gives you a figure that shows you a pool, has these letters above it, and those letters relate to this up here. Okay, and the numbers here. We're interested in, or what falls under our scope of work is insulated cables 0 to 750 volts right there. None of this stuff over here. 15 kV, 15,000 volts, and higher. That's not us. So we don't look at that. It's always 0 to 750 or under 600. Okay, which is low voltage cabling. Okay. The next one is coaxial cable. So coaxial cable for 2011 edition is 710. Hmm? No, I'm sorry. 686, yeah, page 686. All right. And then for 2008, it's page 652. And again, it is right above here, but you might want to draw a line to it. Article 820, which is community antenna television and radio distribution systems. The reason I say have a tab, coaxial cable, because you have questions on coaxial cable. This is the section that you will find coaxial cable in. See, I even drew wrote coaxial cable above it, okay? Because no place else in the NEC does it talk about coaxial cable. So if you get a question on coaxial cable, it's going to be in this section here, CATV, okay? Article 250. And coaxial cable for 2008 edition is on page 652 is where your tab goes. And then the next page has got the actual header and so forth, okay? Next tab is conduit fill, 710, page 710 for 2011 edition. For 2008 edition, it is page 670, okay? 670 for the 2008 and 710 for the 2011. Again, you put it like that, and you put your tabs on. There's another sticker in here. While we're back here, let's go ahead and put this one on. We're going to talk tomorrow about conduit fill, okay? I know you don't want to hear about conduit fill, but you're going to have to know, probably going to have to know about it. Usually there's one or two questions, and they're really quite simple. And after I explain it to you tomorrow, you won't have any problems with it. But this little sticker that says conduit fill area equals diameter times 0.7854, stick that on the section opposite, on the beginning of the tables. Okay, I've got several of them in here, but right up there is where you want to stick it, right above table 1. Okay, yeah, just put that there. All right, right above table 1. And you start, this starts the tables from this section forward. Chapter 9 is all the different tables. We'll talk in detail about those tomorrow. Pretty simple stuff. Once you do a couple of them, won't be that big of a deal for you, and you'll know how to do it when you get out there and do your trade, right? Okay, so that's the 2008. I think I probably don't even need now the email from me, but I hopefully went over all those with you and you were able to catch those. Okay, so takes care of that. What's next on our agenda would be, let's do these. Let's go back and do the cables and raceways. So now your book looks something like this, okay, with these your tabs on it. And let's go down to cables and raceways. So let's open this up. I'll explain some things to you here. People a lot of times complain that the NEC is difficult for them to comprehend, okay? And the reason for that, I believe, is because it's overwhelming. I mean, if you pick up the NEC and you start looking through it, it's overwhelming. I mean, it's, all these sections and broken down in different areas. And I mean, my gosh, and all this code and all these numbers, it is really overwhelming. But what I want to do for you is kind of show you for our scope of work, we're low voltage contractors, and for what we do, I want to show you how we can simplify this. I'm going to show you areas of the code that basically we're not going to be involved with on this exam. Now, what I'm telling you about here relates to the exam only, all right? Obviously, I'm going to talk about low voltage, and I'm going to talk about systems and stuff like that, and articles and sections and so forth. But it really, I try to keep my focus on what relates to the exam. Okay, so I'm not going to go off and talk to you about this job or that job or things of that nature that don't relate to a particular exam. It has to relate to an exam question because we've got limited amount of time to do that. So to review this stuff. So let's take a look at page 2. and let's get a highlighter, and let's spend some time and let's go over this table of contents. I always like to review the table of contents first when I go through a book, because that is the structure of the book. I mean, the table of contents tells you where everything is going to be located, right? I mean, the index too, but the index is all alphabetized, but the table of contents really tells you the structure, you know? And if you understand the structure of the book and the sections of the book, it makes it a whole lot easier for you to comprehend where a answer would be for a particular question that you're asked, okay? So I also want to break this down so that you can see and start understanding what's where and how it's laid out in the National Electric Code, because a lot of stuff in the NEC doesn't relate to us. Then we're not going to be in those sections. So pretty much can take out just about half the book, all right? And that's how I do that is I start with the table of contents and we go through that first. So let's take a look at the table of contents, all right? Let's go to, the chapter, Article 90. I call them chapters. They're called articles, and then the actual little paragraphs in there are called sections. Sometimes I call them articles, sections. Sometimes I call them chapters, and whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as you know where we're going to. So let's just call these chapters. So in chapter 90, okay, which is the introduction to the book and so forth, we're going to go over that tomorrow. I'm going to kind of take you through the book, but what I want to do now is take you through the table of contents and show you what the low voltage sections are of this book. Now, when it comes to a electrical contracting and in the examination, it's not just low voltage, it's not just like landscape lighting, the landscape lighting section that you're going to be talking about because it's low voltage. No, you also will be asked questions about general electrical wiring, regardless of whether it's low voltage or not. You have to get out of your mind that low voltage is under 100 volts or under 90 volts or whatever. Because on the exam, they asked you questions of voltages that are under 600 volts. All right. Now, normally not related to service entrances and things of that nature, but certainly related to general wiring. When you get a question on the exam that relates to conduit fill, they're not talking about low voltage 26 AWG conductors, because those types of conductors you don't even need to follow the conduit fill rules in the NEC. They're going to talk about some other type of conductor that's a higher gauge, or thicker conductor. So basically, I want you to keep that in mind. So the general sections in here would be article, and what you should do is highlight these as we go through them. Just take a highlighter and highlight them. I've already got them highlighted here, but Article 110, requirements for electrical installations. 230 are services. Now that's the entrance, okay? The entrances to the equipment from the outside of the building. 250, grounding and bonding. You'll have questions in grounding and bonding. Then we go into Chapter 3, wiring methods. That's methods of wiring things up. All right. Then you got 314. Those are your enclosures, your outlet devices, your receptacles, things of that nature, your boxes. And then we start on the upper right-hand corner with armored cable type AC. Let's take our sticker, our cable sticker, and let's put that on the top, right there, where it says cables. Now, if you got the 2008 edition, you should be able to follow me with this. It might be in a different section, but it'll be a different area of the page, but it'll be in the same section, actually, or same article. So let's put the cables at the top, and then come all the way down to the section right below 340, right above 342, and let's put a raceway sticker there. Now, I know you've got extra stickers. That's just the way I cut them, okay? I don't know what you can do with them, but they're gifts, my Christmas gift to you. So anyway, cables here, then raceways. Now, these cables are pretty much high voltage cables. I just wanted to break them out for you, okay? You got Romex in here. You've got other types of cables that really are more high voltage cables. So you're pretty much not going to be going into this cable section at all. So we're taking out that big cable section here. All right, anything I didn't highlight over here on the left as well, more than likely, like surge arresters over 1,000 kilovolts and surge protection devices and that kind of stuff, you probably won't be in there. But you may get a question or a definition question about surge protectors or something like that. But we're highlighting what you will be in, and I'm trying to show you different sections of the book so you can have a better understanding of it. Now, then we start on top of chapter or article 342. We got raceways. Now, from here, we go all the way down the page to the top of the other page, side of the page. I'm on page 3 now. All the way down to the bottom. See how I did this? And then we raceways. And it actually goes over to the next page and goes all the way down to the bottom. Then it goes up onto the top again. And it ends right above chapter 4. What I want you to do here with the cable sections, I want you to highlight that in yellow. Okay? The raceway section, like this, I want you to put the sticker there and then highlight the article numbers in green. More importantly, I want you to highlight all these little acronyms. RMC, FMC, LFMC, PVC, which is also RNC, HDPE, all that. I want you to go ahead and highlight those like that, because you're going to get a question on the exam that's not going to specifically tell you it's RNC, or excuse me, rigid non-metallic conduit, which is also, by the way, they've changed that now to PVC. So what you should do at 352 here, right next to PVC, write RNC. It's the same thing. Rigid non-metallic conduit, or it's called polychloride conduit, PVC, same thing. But it used to call it RNC in the older editions of the NEC, and now they changed it to PVC. But in any case, it's just a synonym. It means the same thing. But you need to know that, because the question might ask you about RNC, and you won't find RNC on here anywhere, okay? So keep that in mind. That's one of the things that happens is the questions, they use the acronyms rather than, the acronym just represents the word, right? Like an acronym is something like flexible metal conduit. The acronym for that, flexible metal conduit, is FMC. All right, that's the acronym. A synonym would be something that's close to it, okay? So, or means the same thing, you know. So PVC, a synonym to PVC would be RNC. A synonym to RNC would be PVC, all right? But you need to know all those terms, because the question might say, if you're running EMT, how high do you have to mount the tube or something like that, or actually the conduit. So, but they might just give you the acronyms, so you need to know these acronyms. So if you don't know them, it's really easy. You just flip to cables and raceways. These are all raceways, by the way. A raceway is a conduit, a tube, you know, any type of thing that is housing the wire, you know. And cable trays could be considered a raceway. You know, you lay your wires in the cable trays. That's a raceway. It's like the place that cars go on, right? But the car is the wire, right? So the wire is in those raceways. Now, in telecommunication terminology, we call those pathways. All right. And we'll get into that differently. And that's one way you can figure out where the answer to the question is, by terminology. If they say PVC or RNC, then you know it's probably from the National Electric Code, right? But if they say horizontal pathway or backbone pathway, those are terminologies that come out of telecommunications. So, you know, knowing the terms and knowing the definitions and what the meanings are is very important in order to pass these exams. So you go down to the bottom. I just stick another raceway tab there just because I got it. And I flip over the page, go all the way down to right above chapter 4 and put raceways. Now, what I've done is I've taken out a huge section of the National Electric Code and broken it down into cables and broken it down into raceways. And you're mostly concerned with the raceways. Let me give you an example. In the question, they will have to ask you if they're going to want you to do something with the raceway. Define how often you have to support it, or define how often where it can be placed, where it's permitted, where it's not permitted to be used, or how often you support the tube or the pipe. Because obviously, if it's a tube, it's flexible. You got to support it more often on a wall than you would on a actual metal pipe that's more stiff, right? Or PVC is flexible too, so you got to support that and more often than you do when you have a rigid pipe. So the questions can be just simply how often you have to support a piece of RMC, rigid metal conduit. All right. So they're going to tell you either the acronym RMC in the question, and that's the noun, right, the subject matter, or they're going to spell it out for you, rigid metal conduit. But they might give you RMC. It could be very simple. Question like, where can RMC be used, or where can it not be used, or how often do you have to support a 10-foot stick of RMC. So once you see that it's RMC, you need to know that's rigid metal conduit. Then, of course, you just can flip to the cables and raceway tab you got right there, and you just look for the acronyms. Boom. So and there's going to be several. The questions are going to ask you about raceway types, and if they're permitted, if they're not permitted, if they can be supported, what lengths are permitted, sometimes what sizing is used, and different things of that nature. And so if the noun in the question is a pipe, tubing, another type of raceway, conduit tray, then you can come right here, cable tray. You can come right here at the beginning. You don't have to look in the index, all right? You just flip her to cables and raceways, and you go to that section, you can look at the page numbers, and boom, you go there. So that's why I broke this down like that. Let's flip to the next page then. Now on page 4, you've got your chapter 4, equipment for general use. Now let's go through some of this. Now pretty much, you don't have anything in this whole section here fixed. Let's go to 424, fixed electric space heating equipment. And that's not us. 426, fixed outdoor electrical de-icing and snow melting equipment. No, that's not us. 430, motors, motor circuits, and controllers. That's not us either. 440, air conditioning and refrigeration equipment. That's not us either. It goes on. 480, storage batteries. Possibly. I don't know of any questions, but maybe. Batteries are low voltage. There could be a question about storage batteries. The only question I know about storage batteries is one out of OSHA, is how far the eye wash has to be, how close the eye wash has to be from the batteries, and it's like 25 feet or less. Okay, that's a safety question though. All right, and then you go into chapter 5, special occupancy. So really, chapter 4, there's really nothing in there for us. Now that takes out a huge section of this book. Okay, so then we go into chapter 5. Now chapter 5, special occupancies, and I'm going to explain my tree and how I break this down in a little bit here. But special occupancies, class 1, which is 501, that's a type of occupancy that has a specific type of flammable dust, liquid, or fumes, or what they call filings. Okay, these 3 locations, the only difference on those 3 locations are the type of explosive material that is produced in the location. So if you have, like, say, a cotton mill, or a grain factory, or some place that has gasolines and produces like paint, has fumes, those are the categories that relate to those specific types of hazardous substances that could be in the air, on the ground, and it could be dangerous. Now, we're going to go into those tomorrow, and I'm going to explain those to you. You'll see, once you see those, it's really simple to understand. It's class 1, class 2, class 3, Roman numerals, okay? Not number 1, 2, and 3. Because class 1, class 2, class 3, remote control, signaling power, limited circuits, those are number 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we're talking about Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. There's a difference. Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3 is about hazardous locations. Okay, class 1, 2, and 3 with regular numbers, that's circuits. Class 1, class 2, class 3 circuits. Okay, that's a different chapter. Now, you can 504, that is intrinsically safe systems. Now, that's the systems or the components or the devices that you have to install that makes them intrinsically safe, means it makes them safe to be used inside class 1, class 2, or class 3 locations. So if you booting an alarm system in one of those locations and you have to have an intrinsically safe system put in, that means the box that your alarm system is inside or whatever has to be sealed and has to withstand an explosion from the inside out. Meaning that if something happens on the inside, it's not going to ignite vapors or filings or dust on the outside of the housing. So if you have a spark in there, it has to not affect anything outside. So your systems, intrinsically safe systems, are systems that are not going to cause an explosion to the environment that is a hazardous location environment. Okay? All right. Once you understand that, we'll go over that in a little bit more detail tomorrow. You won't have any problem with it. You know, you find, and they will have to tell you, that's what's great about these questions. They have to tell you, they have a question, they have to tell you about what type of hazard it is. Hazard is 1 location, 2, or 3. And they'll ask you something about that. So you know where to go because they tell you in the question where to go. You just got to remember that there's categories or chapters for these different hazardous locations. Now, next page, page 6, 517, healthcare facilities. Possibly. In telecommunications, there's a section for healthcare. It all depends on what the question is. 518, assembly occupancy, possibly. And then 555, marina and boat yards, possibly. Then you got 590. Remember I mentioned earlier about OSHA in 1926, the OSHA book is about temporary electrical installations. This is your section of the National Electric Code that relates to temporary electrical installations for construction. Then we go into Chapter 6, special equipment, and that consists of, basically for us, I mean, a lot of this stuff is not relating to us. I mean, 610, cranes and hoists. 625, electrical vehicle charging systems, no. 630, electric welders. You know, this doesn't have anything to do with low voltage or what we're going to be testing on. So again, you come up to 640, audio signal processing, amplification, and reproduction equipment, possibly. 645, information technology equipment, yeah, possibly, absolutely. 650, pipe organs, no. More like X-ray equipment, 660, no. Okay, so 640, highlight that. 645, highlight that. 680, swimming pools, fountains, and similar installations? Yes, possibly. You're restricted on running your cabling or your wires at a certain length, 10 feet of a body of water, like a pool. So, and there's some other requirements there and so forth. And I mentioned earlier when we went to that tab we had that says pool clearances. Remember that? It has the diagram, and then you could basically get your idea how far above the pool the conductors need to be, and how far at the bottom, horizontally, the conductors need to be away from the water and so forth. Okay, so then we go through that, nothing else there. Now, Chapter 7 is special conditions. This is pretty much a section we will be involved with. On page 8 now, you want to turn the page. 720, circuits and equipment operating at less than 50 volts. Okay, that is basically your landscape lighting systems, all right? Your landscape lighting goes there. Outdoor landscape lighting, 12 volts or 24 volts or 48 volts, whatever it happens to be. Notice 725, Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 remote control signaling and power limited circuits. Remember, let's don't get that confused with hazardous 1, hazardous 2, hazardous 3 locations. Remember that. That's Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3 for the hazardous locations. These are actually 1, 2, and 3 for the classes of the circuits, class circuits, okay? 760, fire alarm systems. Now, this is the wiring with fire alarm systems. This isn't the components. It's only the wiring, fire alarm wiring. So, and also, raceways and, that the wiring goes into. But keep that in mind, because if you have equipment question about fire alarms, that's going to be out of the NFPA 72 or possibly the 101. Okay. 770, optical fiber cables and raceways. Now, that's optical fiber. That's not even a metallic member. That's a clear strand of glass, basically. Then we've got Chapter 8, Communication Systems. Now, this chapter you'll be in heavily with the National Electric Code, because this basically relates to all telecommunication systems. Okay. If you look at Chapter 8, Communication Circuits, and then A10, radio and TV equipment, that's all stuff would be involved in. A20, I mentioned that earlier, community antenna television and radio distribution systems. And then you can see number 2, it says coaxial cables there. Get you a closer view for that. Here you go. A30, network powered broadband communication systems. Okay, those are all sections that you're going to be heavy into. All right, especially 800 communication circuits. At least 5 to 10 questions out of that section alone. And then you got Chapter 9, the tables. Specifically Chapter 1, percentage of cross-section of conduit and tubing for conductors. Okay. All right. Now let's go back to the front of the book, and remember the tab I had there that says Code Tree? Let's turn to Code Tree. Now, what is the Code Tree? I call it Code Tree. I just made that up. So basically, it's like, I kind of think of it like the branches of a tree. And this gives you the layout here, and you need to pay attention to this and focus on this, because this explains the structure of the National Electric Code. And it really, now that we've gone through the table of contents, when you look at this, you'll be able to, and if you understand this, even if you have to come back to it and read it, it'll help you out tremendously, okay? Because if you don't understand the way this is laid out, then you can easily make a mistake on the exam on a question. So let's take a look at that code tree. Chapter 1, 2, Chapter 3, and Chapter 4 apply generally to all electrical installations. Okay, now Chapter 1 is general, just applies generally, and then wiring and protection, wiring methods and materials, and equipment for general use. All right, now that means it applies generally to all electrical installations. Now let me clarify that. Look at Chapter 8. It applies generally to all electrical installations with the exception of Chapter 8, because Chapter 8 stands alone. All right? Chapter 8 is all by itself, meaning that Chapter 8, our Chapter 8, which is low voltage, we have a special chapter, and everything in that chapter of Chapter 8 is all we have to pay attention to, unless the specific section that we're reading says it's modified, or it says as per some section here in Chapter 1 through 4, okay? Or section 5 through 7. Like, for example, if you're installing communication circuits, there could be, it stands alone except for the fact when it deals with hazardous equipment, okay? So in most of the cases, when you're in Chapter 8, even when it comes to grounding and bonding, which is Article 200, 250, excuse me, that's 200, 250, it stands alone. Unless it says in the actual article or the section that you're in, as per section 250 dot so-and-so, okay? So unless it says that in here, this whole section here is all by itself. Chapter 8. Now that's the whole chapter, 820, and all those chapters. Now, so basically this is the general section here, 1 through 4. And then this is special occupancy, Chapter 5. So this is, Chapter 5 has to do with special occupancy types. That means that, is it a healthcare facility? Is it an assembly facility? Occupancies are different types of buildings, basically, that house people or have people in them. So you could have a detention center, things like that. You'll see that a lot in NFPA 101 when we talk about fire safety, okay? Then you've got Chapter 6, Special Equipment. Now this is special types of equipment that are being used, all right? And then you've got special conditions. So let's go back, and before we go anywhere else, let's go back to the table of contents, and let's look at it a little bit differently now, where we have a better understanding of it, hopefully. So chapter 1 through 4, right? Chapter 1, general. Chapter 2, wiring and protection. Chapter 3, wiring methods and materials. All the way through your cables and your raceways. That's all general stuff. Okay, this is all general. So if you got a question on wiring method, and it's a general question, it doesn't say communication conductors or communication cables. Because if it says communication conductors or cables, where's that going to come from? That's going to come from Article 800, somewhere in there, right? And so that's why I say you're going to have a lot of questions out of that. And how you figure those out, it uses the word communication conductors or communication circuits or cables or something like that. Okay. If it has a specific type of raceway, then you just come right here. If it's asking you a question about that raceway, Okay, now if they're saying to you about RNC and they're saying, bearing RNC, then you might go to your burial depths here because it talks about RNC in there. But normally you would go to, I'm sorry, I said RNC. I think it talks about RMC, rigid metal conduit, not RNC. So in any case, if it talks about a specific conduit body acronym, then you just come here, okay? Then we go into Chapter 5, special occupancies, remember? Now, special occupancies, we go back to the code tree. Special occupancies, what they do in special equipment and special conditions, Chapter 5, 6, and 7, they modify Chapters 1 through 4. See, these sections here, if there's something, if it's a special occupancy, it can change this. If it's a special type of equipment, it can change this. If it's special type of conditions, like hazardous condition, it can change this, okay? So these sections here, they modify sections 1 through 4, okay, based on the occupancy, right? Look, this is hazardous occupancy types, right? What other occupancy types? We got healthcare occupancies over here. We've got assembly occupancies. We've got theaters, carnivals, motion, things that we're not going to be getting into. But they will change or modify possibly, and it would tell you that in the occupancy. But what are they going to have to tell you? They're going to have to tell you, they're going to have to list the word occupancy, right? And they're going to tell you what type of occupancy it is. So that's a whole other thing we'll talk about tomorrow. When you see the word occupancy, what do you do? What do you know? And so forth. If it's a specific type of occupancy that it would modify something, then you would go to that occupancy listed in here, and you would look in there for the answer. Okay, then you got special equipment. This is special types of equipment, and we went through this already. All this different equipment, charging circuits and everything, electric welders and that we don't even have anything to do with. The only thing we mentioned here was the audio signal processing, amplification, reproduction equipment. Again, I don't know of anybody having a question on that. Information technology equipment, there possibly could be, but more likely that'd be out of the telecom book anyway. We'll talk about that when we get to the telecom book, how you know the difference between telecommunications and this book, okay? So it mostly terminology, okay? You have to know the terminology. Because when they're talking about terminology, telecommunications terminology, they use that liberally in the telecom book, whereas in the NEC, they only say things like communication cables, okay? So I'll explain that in a little bit more detail as we get closer to that tomorrow. Then you've got special equipment. Then you come down to special conditions. Okay, so special conditions, fire alarm systems, optical fiber cables and raceways, and so forth. Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 remote control signaling and power limit circuits. Those are your burglar alarm circuits right there. Okay, and anything that deals with remote controlling, signaling, and so forth are right there. So those actually modify, sections modify. So you're pretty much not going to be in this section much up here at all unless it's talking about general. If it's going to talk about cabling, you won't be into these unless they specifically say this type of cabling, which would be rare because this is all really usually high voltage cabling here, meaning it's over 90 volts. And if they talk about raceways, they would be in this section right here. Okay. So again, let's go back to the code tree and let's go over that one more time. So chapter 1, 2, and 3, and 4, okay, applies generally to all wiring except to communication conductors and cables. Okay, so the word communication is a big deal. You know, when it comes to communications, that's going to be in chapter 8. Okay, so that modifies chapter 8 unless it's modified by, unless chapter 8 says that it's modified by one of the other sections, you don't have to do anything with that. Chapter 8 stands alone. Okay? All right. Hopefully I've made that clear. So anytime you're in chapter 8, it stands alone, has its own requirements, and then you have special occupancy, special equipment, special conditions. Okay. All right. Now we come down to tables. Chapter 9, tables in the back of the book. And we're going to go into that in much more detail when we go over conduit fill. I'll explain all these tables to you at that point. Let's see what else we have here in our packet so we can pretty much wrap up this session. I'm going to go over these with you tomorrow. Cable substitution chart. In the meantime, let's just put them back in our packet. These stickers here that say, this is the new stickers I just added. These are part of this packet here, supplemental things that you're going to be using. Cable substitutes, that goes on there. Put that back in. View all tabs. Yeah, we got to put that view all tabs sticker in. I didn't mention it to you, but service and outlet boxes. I hope you guys found that. That's not on the sheet that you originally had here. It was on a extra little sheet I put in there because I had added that at another class. But view all tabs. Let's just wrap this up. All that stuff's going to go back in your packet. Make sure you do put it back in the package here, because when we do go over this, you don't want this stuff mixed up with anything else. You'll be going crazy trying to find little tabs and so forth. So let's put that all back in. We'll get back to that tomorrow. So we've got all those done, and you don't need that anymore. You can just basically throw that away. View all tabs. Well, I needed that for view all tabs, didn't I? Okay. All right. Page 138, view all tabs. Okay. Well, I got it right there already. Page 138. Yeah. I like putting it on this table, this section here, because first of all, you can see all your bottom tabs, and a lot of times you're going to be going to these bottom tabs. Okay. If you understand what I just talked to you about, if you have a question on any raceway, what tab are you going to go to? Cable raceways, right there. Boom, you got all your acronyms. So the question is asked of you, if they ask you about a type of raceway, tubing, cable, anything like that, you're going to just flip to there, and then you can go find out information about it. Normally it's going to be questions about securing and supporting, if it can be used, if it can't be used, or what sizes they come in, different things of that nature. So the view all tabs goes on page 138 at the very top, because when I start testing out of the National Electric Code, I open my book from here. I have my barrel depths right here on the left-hand side. I can see all my lower tabs here. I can see my right-hand tabs here pretty much so. And then I can also see my other tabs here off to the right. So I start my exam with the NEC opened right to this point here. And that's what View All Tabs is about, right? It just kind of divides up this section so you can see all your bottom tabs clearly. If you want to see all your side tabs, what do you have to do? Look how simple this is. Push the book down. Just push the book down. You can see all your side tabs very clearly now. You know, no reason to go over here and fiddle around trying to find them. Just push the book down. And there they are, okay? You can also hold the book like this to see your side tabs. Or you can hold it backwards too if you want to do it if you're left-handed or right-handed, whatever. Okay, so, but then when you start the exam, we're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but when you start the exam, we always start with the NEC book first. You open it up right there. This is how you start your exam, right there. Your barrel depth chart's right there. You're all set to go. All right? Okay, hopefully that was a little bit helpful for you. As you take the exams today and this evening and tomorrow, you'll be using these tabs, you'll be using the indexes, and you'll gain a lot more knowledge as this time goes on. So thank you very much for putting up with me for the last half an hour to hour or so, and I hope this was helpful. I'm here to help you pass the exam. So we got several more videos to do today, and then tomorrow is Sunday, and we're going to go through how to take the exam tomorrow, and also going to hit these books again. I'm going to show you some really neat things